Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of the day that you are watching us. Thank you for joining us for another episode of WJ Live, powered by the Western Journal. My name is Brian Chai. I am the Deputy Managing Editor of Features here at the Western Journal. To my left, I got Mike Lawston, one of our star reporters. To my right, I have Andrew Shasha, one of our adequate reporters.
Yes.
We've got a lot to get to because the news has not stopped even though we took a break. So without further ado, Michael, what have you got for us today?
Yeah, so polling following the Capitol incursion is showing that the narratives that the Democrats wanted to push and have been pushing didn't exactly work out as well as they had hoped. One poll from The Blaze shows that Republicans and Democrats pretty much feel exactly the same way they did before. And then on the left, a poll from Politico basically confirms the same sort of thing. And so I wrote a column this past weekend kind of explaining that the left had the narrative for a second there. I think Trump he mishandled the situation a bit. By continuing to push this stolen election rhetoric, he kind of heated up tensions, and that led to the situation we had on January 6th. Now, I don't give him blame for that. He repeatedly called for people to be peaceful. But if we're going to be fair on both sides for issues like this, I think Trump has some level of culpability. And Democrats really could have capitalized on that. It seemed like they were for a few minutes there, and then they just took things way too far. They started saying that he was trying to coordinate a coup. It was seditious and insurrection, and then they started invoking Black Lives Matter and saying that, you know, if it had been Black Lives Matter activists there instead of MAGA folks, that they would have been treated by police much more harshly, which we know. There were plenty of BLM riots where the police just ran away over the course of the summer. That it's just a completely false narrative. And the people that had their businesses and homes destroyed and the people that lost loved ones during those riots over the summer, they remember that. And I think the Democrats lost the narrative there. So do you guys think that the left flubbed their chances of capitalizing on the Capitol incursion here?
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think without question. I mean, it was... Once again, we talk about it all the time on their show, just the overplaying of the hand from the left. I mean, I think they definitely had an opportunity to say, you know, in like you just said, in some substantial or less substantial way, Donald Trump's rhetoric, the things that he's pushed on his audience and the things that his audience has then in turn kind of drummed up in the echo chamber, those things are undoubtedly they are related to what happened on January 6th. They might have kind of pushed people in that direction. They certainly, turned up the temperature on the pressure plate or on the pressure cooker, and so you can absolutely say that the Democrats had a huge opportunity. And to say, oh well, Black Lives Matter. If it had been Black Lives Matter, they would have been gunned down in the streets. There were no guns pulled by police on the Capitol. It's like, well, okay, that's not true. Someone was shot and killed in that riot.
Ashley Babbitt.
We've just seen that. The left absolutely loves to overplay its hand, and I think part of that is they know they have control of the media, and they know that the media will provide them cover. But America's not buying it. We saw what happened last summer. There was plenty of kind of jokes online on Twitter last week, and like I said, like we've said before, we said it yesterday. This is not a good thing that happened on January 6th. This is a terrible thing. I mean, we should be rebuking it on the right as hard as they are rebuking it on the left. But this idea that the left is just washing its hands of any wrongdoing last year is obscene.
And I think, just to make one point clear before we get to what you think about it, Brian, this might not be true for everybody in the office or everybody at the desk here, but I am a Trump supporter. I have been a Trump supporter this whole time. I remain so now. I'm really disappointed with how he's handled the election, how he's handled his tweets and the rhetoric leading up to this, and I do think that he shares some blame for what happened. That being said, he did call for everyone to be peaceful. He's never called for violence. He did not stage this coup. And, you can hold a president, you can hold Trump responsible for some of the wrongdoings he's had without going as far to say that he's tried to lead a white supremacist insurrection at the Capitol. Okay? So just wanted to throw that out there.
That's fair. The way I look at this is short answer, yeah, the left overplayed their hand here. Long answer, I'm not sure it matters. At the end of the day,
Right.
they know, like, and again, to be fair, I know plenty of conservatives who, like you, were, not that you flip sides or anything, but were appalled at what happened at the Capitol. They announced it. There were people there who took that narrative and gave it an honest, uncomfortable approach. I have not seen a single person on the left saying, hey guys, maybe we shouldn't make this about race.
Yeah.
You can overplay your hand when you know your side is just bought in, like completely bought in. Like they ran the left ran zero risk of losing anyone by overplaying their hands.
Right.
I mean, they incurred more ire from conservatives and moderates, but they've been doing that for a while, and it hasn't seemed to really matter. I mean, it looks like they have the next president of the United States. It looks like they have, the supermajority. It doesn't seem to have mattered. So yes, they overplayed their hands, but that's just because they've been emboldened to do so. And,
right.
And it's going to get worse. I mean, the next time, who knows? I know President Trump is supposed to speak out later today about his impeachment. Trump could come out and give the most level-headed statement ever, and the left is just going to be like, hey, there's a joke if the left saw Trump walk on water, they'd point out that he couldn't swim. That's just what they do. And their side is not just complicit, but fully bought in. It's not, it's so ironic to me that the left, the mainstream media, loves to paint Trump supporters as these cultists. When, let's be real here, the left is every bit as cultish in their behavior. They're every bit as cultish in their behavior as whatever they perceive the right to be.
I think one of the most unfortunate things about this last 4 to 8 years politically is that we've seen, we've long heard people talk about the dangers of partisanship. I mean, it was spoken of in George Washington's farewell address in the late 1700s. We've heard this before. The truly kind of concerning thing is, I think over the last 4 years, we've seen the vast majority of politicians turn, and we're no longer speaking to the middle. We're no longer speaking across the aisle. We are speaking to ourselves. They stand towards the center, and they speak out to the sides, and that is all you have.
I do think, you guys are saying that this is typical mainstream media stuff. I do think this situation, like on January 6th, when we were watching all the events unfold, I think all of us were thinking this is going to hurt us really badly. And it certainly will. We're going to see harm from this going forward for a while. But I don't think the effects are going to be as drastic. And I think it's because the Democrats flubbed their chance. And I think when you looked at the media coverage for the first few hours there, it was coordinated and powerful in a way that, like, it was just dialed up to 11 in a way that we don't usually see. And it really seemed like the left could have taken hold of the narrative and could have taken a huge advantage then. And it just seems like what's been proven is that the media has completely lost their hold on being any sort of viable medium for truth, or that people a place that people respect as honest. Like, nobody bought in. Everybody's just kind of stayed in their own positions.
I mean, to be fair, I think that's been the case for a while now. And that's been the case for a while. I do agree with you that the brazenness of the direction they're going in is certainly surprising, but I don't think it's fair to say that it's like, and to be fair to, and I hate doing this, but to be fair to the media, it does feel like there just aren't that many people in America right now who want their minds changed. They want to hear what they want to hear. So the news, the media, and this goes on the right too. There are certainly conservative news sites out there that, I mean, Joe Biden could cure cancer, and they probably wouldn't give him a very fair shake or say that Trump set it up. But and that is one thing, far be it for me to ever give credit to one Willard Mitt Romney. Yeah, that's right. His name's Willard. But, when he spoke on January 6th, after everything had kind of settled down, he made a point to point out that it doesn't feel like people, like, even if they had gone deeper, even if they had done more investigation into alleged election fraud and once again found that there had been no fraud, it wouldn't have mattered to a lot of those people at the Capitol. So it does feel like, yes, the media, you can't, like CNN's coverage of all that has just been vomit-inducing.
Right.
But, again, they're playing to their audience in a way. Their audience believes. It's not even so much that they believe what they're being told. They want to be told what they believe.
Right.
And I think that's, one of the things we like to, one of our claims at the Western Journal, yes, obviously we are conservative, but we want to equip readers with the truth. When we need to be fair, we do our best to be fair. As far as, again, just picking on CNN because it's so easy, CNN knows what their audience wants. They're just, what's the word I'm looking for? They're reinforcing the echo chamber.
Yes.
Like they are entrenched in the echo chamber. They're just building layer after layer after layer around it.
And I think to both of those points, Michael, if you had any more questions, if you want to continue to facilitate. But I think to that point, I think that the most concerning part to me is not really what's going on in those echo chambers. It's the fact that, and what's irritated me the most or frustrated me the most is that I think, unfortunately, some establishment Republicans have bought into the narrative. No matter how hard the left plays its hand, they're going to buy into it. And at the very least, if they didn't buy into it, they were waiting in the wings for a moment like this to lash out at President Trump. Now, we know I would like to, I have loved to call myself one of the more critical people on the right of Donald Trump. I think I'm fair about it. I'd like to think that I celebrate those successes that we saw during this administration. And I'd like to think that, when those moments were, contentious and things got dark or incredibly, just unacceptably rude, that I was someone who called that out. Now, to be fair, I also then need to call out those figures on the establishment right and on the more conservative end of the spectrum who were waiting in the wings for a moment to take out Donald Trump, or at the very least have fallen for the narrative here or think that there is some political gain that they can make. Now, we've seen in light of this, the Democrats rushed after the Capitol riots to push on a new impeachment proceeding. It failed the first time, so why not give it a second go? It was incredibly unpopular, but why not give it a second go? So they rushed to impeachment. They impeached today, this afternoon, right before this show. They started the vote and impeached. Now, unfortunately, one of the editors in our newsroom told me today, Bradley told me, that it appears from the numbers that twice as many Republicans voted to impeach President Donald Trump as ever a number of Democrats did to impeach Bill Clinton in the 90s.
Wow.
Which means that, first of all, the Republicans were more willing to get on that bipartisan train, which, we can argue in certain situations bipartisanship is necessary, and that's a thing to be celebrated. In this instance, I just don't think it is. Liz Cheney, Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, Mitt Romney, now the three senators there. Willard Romney. The three senators there, they were not, they're not going to be held to a vote, at least not until the Senate gets its conviction proceedings, because McConnell has decided, the Senate Majority Leader for the Republicans for the last week, he's decided he's not calling them back into session to do this before Trump leaves office, before the inauguration. The senators have not been held to a vote yet. Liz Cheney voted in favor of the impeachment. And we've heard throughout this week that a lot of more conservative Republicans have at least mulled it over. We heard at the beginning of the week that McConnell was mulling it over, or was at least, pleased with the prospect of an impeachment. We heard some talk about Lindsey Graham, and we've heard some talk from McCarthy in the House minority. Now, to be fair to Lindsey Graham and McConnell, it seems as though they've turned on that, or they never believed that to begin with. Lindsey Graham said today, or there was a report that said he has essentially spoken up about impeachment and said that those Republicans who support it are making the problem worse, not better. That's a quote. And his spokespeople have said as well that he's been calling on other Republicans to to sit this one out. Do not pursue this impeachment. It's not good for the unity message
Yeah.
that Joe Biden
Right.
and the Democrats have been running on all this time to essentially make their last act before taking office to impeach and remove a president on his
The
last
least
legs.
uniting measure you could go after.
Exactly. And you have in McCarthy saying that Trump bears responsibility. That's another quote. Now, Michael, you said that as well. As someone who is always, whenever there's, crime or riots, I've always been someone who says, the criminal, even mass shootings, the criminals are the people responsible.
Yes.
I don't like to give responsibility to, the people speaking so much as the people doing, the bad acting, the people who actually committed a crime. But Trump definitely set the stage for some of this, and, the discussions that have been had definitely set the stage for some of this. But these Republicans who have fallen for that Democratic narrative, who have said, oh, well, I'm willing to run with this impeachment, I'm willing to vote against, that is something that, frankly, as a hardline conservative and as a Trump critic, that's a profile in cowardice. That is upsetting. That's something where if some of these, major players that I have long respected, Willard Romney, not one of them, but McConnell, Graham to a certain extent, these folks who I respect, if they're going to move forward with this impeachment, if when the Democrats take over, they vote in favor of conviction after the president has left office, it's a profile in cowardice, and it's going to make me honestly reconsider my relationship and voter registration with the Republican Party.
So you're going Democrat?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But I will absolutely stand as an independent voter who leans right without question if they're going to pursue this, if they're going to be that cowardly and use this and be opportunistic with this to take out Donald Trump or to get a last blow in as he leaves office. Mm-hmm. But I want to know what you guys think of that, because I'm only one person who's been saying that. I know the Trump supporters say that, but I'm one of the only far conservative folks that I've heard say this would be enough for the Republican Party for me.
Well, I know Joe, the libertarian in the office, even he yesterday was saying we can't just abandon all of these MAGA people. Like, if we do that, that's going to be a huge mistake. And if we don't take any of the strengths that Trump brought to the party, if we don't take those in, if we just abandon all of those, if all of these establishment Republicans just kind of reject Trump and move on and try to go back to business as normal, that's going to shatter the party.
Yep.
Like, we are headed in a really great direction. I think Trump did some really amazing things, and I think he had some faults. And we're in a position right now to move past him where we can take those amazing things on and move past his faults. And what I fear from Republicans backing this is that they're not going to learn any lessons from the Trump presidency, and they're just going to move on and abandon all these advantages that we've gained over the last 4 years.
Yeah, I think the referendum on this, we'll know what's happened come November 2024,
Yeah.
hopefully I'm still alive then.
But getting up there.
Man, you're telling me, brother. I do know that, like you said, the big risk I see here, and Andrew, it already sounds like, not that you've gone all the way there, but it is the disenfranchised Republican voter, because if we go to a system where you basically have the Trump Patriots and the traditional GOP, that means Democrats are going to win every election for the rest of history.
Yes.
For the rest of the time, Democrats will win, which is, I think a lot of the times when people talk about America's going socialist, I think it's a little overblown.
Yeah.
Let's chill out. But I do think that in the event of a fractured Republican Party, or a fractured right, fractured conservative, whatever you want to call it, we probably will come dangerously close to a, maybe not outright socialism, but something resembling it, which is a terrifying thought. And to go back to your original point, Andrew, I will say I'm probably not nearly as impassioned as you about. I do think I agree with you. I think it's cowardly. It's, honestly, just from a pragmatic standpoint, what's the point?
Mm-hmm.
Trump's gone in 7 days.
It's really
8 days.
performative.
Yes.
Yeah. But the reason I don't think I'm nearly as riled up as you is probably because at this point I would expect no less. Mm-hmm. I've been on this planet a little while longer than you guys. And politicians are fickle creatures. They will do whatever's best. Let me rephrase that. 9 times out of 10, politicians will do whatever they think is in their best interest. whether it's on a political level or in this, because I do think, to be fair, I can imagine that being at the Capitol during the incursion was probably pretty scary.
Oh yeah.
And I'm sure that impacted some Republicans. But when it comes to some of these, never Trumpers, for the record, guys, I hate the phrase rhinos. Like, can we drop that from our lexicon? But these never Trumpers, people who only went along with Trump because he was winning. They, like you kind of called it. They were waiting for this. I don't think their minds were ever changed about Trump. I think they were waiting for Trump to, admittedly, I mean, like we've established before, Trump does a lot of good. He's also probably his own worst enemy. So I think they were just waiting for something that even tangentially that you can pin some blame on him for. And like Michael very thoughtfully threaded the needle earlier, I do think to completely blame Trump for January 6th is naive.
Yes.
But to say that he has no culpability, I think is also
wrong.
incorrect.
Yeah.
So, taking that kernel of culpability and just using it as a full-on launching pad to excise Trump from the right, I can't say I'm surprised by the politicians doing that.
And that's what all of this was when you really sum it up. This was an excuse. This event was an excuse. People were waiting for a big excuse.
Yes.
And this, you know what? The folks who were on the ground that day, they gave it to them. They gave them that excuse big time. And they are to blame for that.
Yep.
Period.
Yeah. I will say, as far as... I said this earlier, politicians are fickle beasts. I firmly believe that. They will do whatever is best for them, except, as we've learned these past couple of weeks, one, Michael Richard Pence. I'm all about the full names on politicians today, guys. But Mike Pence, I'm going to be brutally honest, I really didn't think much of him, not in like a negative way. I just, he's a vice president. Like, who's the last neat, cool vice president we've had? Like, that's just not a thing.
That's neat.
Yeah. Vice presidents are, by and large, irrelevant, for lack of a better term. Like, so I honestly haven't thought much about Mike Pence. But, actually, he does have a bunny rabbit, which is really cool. That is a cool pet.
Yeah.
But these past couple weeks, I got to say, I've been pretty impressed with everything Pence has done. And that includes both on January 6th, he refused to, decertify the election results. Much to the I mean, I know some Trump supporters who outright call Pence a traitor for following the Constitution, which I don't understand. But, so Pence did what was best for country in that case. He did not go along with what some fringe, MAGA people wanted. And then a week later, Pence, once again, this time, basically told Nancy Pelosi to go kick rocks because Pelosi wanted Pence to invoke the 25th Amendment and just, remove Trump from power there. And I got the statement here from Pence, and there's a pretty good quote here where he basically says, but now, with just 8 days left in the president's term, you and the Democratic caucus, you referring to Pelosi, are demanding that the cabinet and I invoke the 25th Amendment. I do not believe that such a course of action is in the best interest of our nation or consistent with our Constitution. Last week, I did not yield to pressure to exert power beyond my constitutional authority to determine the outcome of the election, and I will not now yield to efforts in the House of Representatives to play political games at a time so serious in the life of our nation. Expertly written, really well said. Yes. I think, and I do have to say, in a current political climate where it's so easy to ignore fairness in favor of party. I think a spade's a spade. I think we see that in the Republican Party. And obviously, we see that in the Democrat Party. But for Pence to do what he did these past 2 weeks, I've been really impressed with it. My respect level for whatever respect my worth is to Mike Pence, my respect level for Pence has risen, not just a notch, but, a solid level or two. So I want to ask you guys, Mike, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on how Pence has been doing these past couple weeks?
I've been extremely impressed with it. When he first decided not to reject the electoral votes, there was a narrative going around that he was just motivated out of self-interest and doing what was best for him. Once he sent that letter to Nancy Pelosi, that narrative evaporated. And Pence did exactly what he thought was best for the country, what he thought was constitutional, and that's incredibly impressive considering the state that the Republican Party is in right now with the things we've talked about, how much Democrats are always motivated out of self-interest. It's impressive that we have a politician that's willing to alienate all sides to do what's right.
No, absolutely. I want to piggyback on that point 100%. I mean, people that know me know that, one of my first pieces with the Western Journal in, I think, 2018 or 2017 was kind of a little bit of my political history and how I got on board with President Trump. And I voted for President Trump 100% on, the good graces of Mike Pence. I voted on Mike Pence. He was the guy that brought me to the table. And I think that what he's done in the last week or so has been nothing short of politically heroic. I'm going to go back to, George Washington's farewell address. The thing that, the political lesson of that, the historical lesson of that is always that what a man does in power is not as important as what he does when he relinquishes power or how he relinquishes power if he chooses to. That was that moment. Mike Pence, he put away his interests. He put away what he probably would have liked to do was stay in office for 4 more years.
Without a doubt.
Yep.
No question about it. He would have probably liked to support the president in this. He has supported him through thick and thin under this administration. No matter what the president has done, he has supported him.
He had a lot more to gain.
He had a lot more to gain, and he gave that power up. And he was absolutely lambasted for it on the right in a pretty disgusting way, including by the president. To then turn days later and say, I refuse to go with the left on the opportunity to push out the president. Again, heroic, putting aside what he wants, alienating people on all sides. And, my worry with the segment that we just did about, the Republicans looking for that opportunity to oust President Trump with, previous segments where we've talked about how Trump has pushed on the establishment. My worry is that we on the right are headed for the big divorce. It's, the populist right and the conservative right are on track for divorce. Mike Pence has done nothing but try to prevent that divorce.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That bleak future I talked about where, the Democrats are winning every possible election. It does feel like Pence has been, at least the most prominent figure these last few weeks trying to hold that stitching together. And it's just... like I said, I never thought much of Pence, really, as I do most vice presidents. But, man, he stepped up to the plate in a big way. My follow-up question, Andrew, I'll kick it to you this time. Do you think this is a prelude to a Pence 2024 run?
I certainly think it's a springboard. It would win a little bit of my support. Going through the last 4 years when people have said, oh, could this be like a Reagan-Bush where, Reagan runs twice in a row, he wins twice in a row, and then Bush carries on for, 4 more years. Clearly, that's not what happened. Donald Trump is leaving office. But could his vice president go? I have said that as much as I respect and love Mike Pence, I don't think he's the guy. I don't think he's the future of the party.
Yeah.
This would at least sway me. People know that Nikki Haley is, she's my candidate for 2024 unless something major changes. But Mike Pence, this is a springboard for him. This moment was strong.
And I would say what we saw in the vice presidential debate, he could tear up Joe Biden in a debate for sure.
Yeah, that was I almost felt bad for Kamala.
Yeah,
that was
it's pretty rough.
That wasn't a fair fight. Yeah. Andrew, actually, real quick. So how would a Pence Haley ticket have your definitive vote?
Without question.
Okay, I like that. Mike, same question to you, but sort of, how do you think? Because let's be real here. Part of Trump's appeal is his bombast, his character, his flair. Pence doesn't really bring that. So if Pence were to run 2024, how do you think he'd do against? Even if I imagine it probably won't be Biden, but maybe we get Kamala versus Pence round 2. So how do you think Pence could do in 2020?
He would destroy Kamala. I am worried about politics is very much about, personalities, and Trump having that cult of personality that really helped him. And at times Pence can come off as a little rigid and a little typical of boring politician. And so that would definitely hurt him. But in terms of who would be best for the job, there's no question that Pence would be an amazing president to me. What would his chances be? Yeah, I mean, it would depend on who he's running against. I think Kamala would be just another Hillary Clinton. Everyone would hate her so much.
I do wonder, because like I mentioned earlier, I've had some staunch Trump supporters come to me and tell me that they think Pence is a traitor for not deserving.
Yes, that's.
So I do worry about that in a hypothetical Pence 2024 run. Is obviously no one except Trump himself will command all the Trump voters, but can Pence siphon off enough of them to win a potential election?
Look, if Nikki Haley was on the ticket, that brings a lot of that flair that he needs to get over the top. Fair. So I think that would help a lot. I would like his chances better if someone like that was with him.
I think we're also wondering, I mean, Trump, no question about it, they could convict on the articles brought today, and Trump would never be able to run for president again. I mean, they could, whether that happens or not, I don't know if Trump actually runs in 2024. I think it's more likely that he'll try to be a kingmaker. I think that he is going to be someone who points his base in a direction. And I think that if he were to give it to Pence, I think Pence takes it.
That's a really good point.
That's the major question is, does Trump go along?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, obviously take this with a grain of salt because it's just, reports, anonymous sources. But, I have seen my fair share of articles saying that, the relationship between Trump and Pence has gotten a little frosty. Which, I mean, for what it's worth, if Trump is upset with Pence, I don't know why he would be. I think that's incredibly petty to be mad at Pence for anything right now. But I will say, I think the answer to Pence guaranteeing a 2024 win is going to be a Mike Pence, Kanye West 2024.
Ooh, that's bold. I like that.
Will get him the win. And with the idea of a future vice president, Kanye West, that is all the time we have for you guys.
Oh my gosh.
Just as a reminder, this is WJ Live, powered by the Western Journal. You can catch us every weekday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. If you are an audio listener, you could all do us a huge favor. Go to youtube.com/WJ Live. You can click the subscribe button. That way you will know every time a new episode goes live. And actually, if you could do me one more favor, go to the comment section and let our podcast producer, Kayla Kunkel, know that I should be allowed to wear basketball jerseys on this show. Much appreciated. To those of you who are already watching us on YouTube, please still leave that comment for Kayla. But you can also go to WJ Live, find us on however you like to listen to your podcast feeds, whether it's Apple, Podcast, Spotify, what have you. And finally, if you wanted to do us three directly a huge favor, go to westernjournal.com/join and subscribe to our site so we can keep equipping you guys with the truth. Thank you so much for listening today. It has been a wild conversation. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.
The Western Journal has rolled out a brand new subscription model designed specifically for readers like you, who want the unvarnished truth that the establishment media won't tell you. Our multi-tiered plans give you exactly what you want and help us fight fake news during this, the most important election of our lives. Become a subscriber to the Western Journal today and unlock exclusive features you won't find anywhere else. It's easy. Just follow